At 6:42 on a cold October morning, I looked up from a leaking irrigation valve and saw three police SUVs climbing my vineyard road. The engines were slow and deliberate, like whoever was inside already believed they had control of the situation. And sitting in the passenger seat of the lead SUV, wearing oversized sunglasses, and that same smug expression she always carried like a badge, was Diane Holloway, president of the Stone Ridge Estates HOA, the local Karen. As soon as the SUV stopped near my pump shed, she stepped out and pointed straight at me. "That's him," she shouted. "That's the man trespassing on association land." I remember standing there in the early fog, dirt on my hands, trying to process how insane that sentence was. Because I wasn't on association land, I was standing in my own vineyard. And what Diane didn't know, what she should have known before dragging police onto my property, was that my land sat outside the city's jurisdiction entirely. Stone Ridge Estates fell inside Arroyo Creek's municipal limits. My vineyard didn't. It was county agricultural land, with recorded surveys, parcel maps, and boundary easements that had been on file long before Stone Ridge's fancy entrance signs were even built. But Diane wasn't the type to let facts slow down a performance. She was the kind of woman who thought confidence could replace legality. And that morning, she had brought police to the wrong property, under the wrong story, for the wrong reason. At the time, I didn't know just how ugly things were about to get. I only knew one thing for sure. Diane Holloway was smiling like she thought she had already won. And people like that are dangerous. My name is Caleb Mercer, and I bought that vineyard 3 years earlier, just outside Paso Robles, California, after my father died. It wasn't some glamorous winery estate, not even close. It was 15 rough acres with 6 decent vine blocks, 1 battered farmhouse, a leaning equipment barn, and an irrigation system that seemed to fail in a new way every week. The place had been half neglected for years. Trellis wires sagged, posts leaned, gophers had turned parts of the lower slope into a graveyard for optimism. But it was land. Real land. Land that asked for work and gave you something honest in return. After my father passed, I needed that. I needed a place where grief had to compete with daily labor, a place where every morning had a purpose. So I poured what I had left into the property and started rebuilding. I replaced broken end posts, restrung wire, rebuilt emitters, patched roofing, and slowly brought the vineyard back to life. It wasn't easy, and it sure wasn't fast, but by the second year, the vines were producing again. Small batches, better quality, enough to feel like the place had a future. That was when the HOA started noticing me. Stone Ridge Estates was built along the western rise above my vineyard. Big, expensive homes, decorative stone walls, private roads, landscaped medians, the kind of subdivision built for people who like country views as long as they don't have to deal with anything country. Because of an old emergency access easement and one badly worded maintenance agreement, the HOA had just enough overlap near my western boundary to imagine it had power over me. Then Diane Holloway became president. The first time she showed up at my house, she had a binder in one hand and that polished, patronizing smile people use when they think they're about to lecture someone beneath them. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "I'm here about several concerns from Stone Ridge residents." "About what?" "Noise before 7 a.m., unsightly storage, visual blight from agricultural materials, and access questions regarding your north lane." "It's a vineyard," I said. She smiled tighter. "Yes, adjacent to a premium residential community." That told me exactly who she was. To Diane, my vineyard wasn't a working property. It was scenery that had become inconvenient. After that, the notices started. Too much machinery noise, too many harvest bins visible from upper homes. Bird deterrent devices were disturbing. Utility tanks were aesthetically incompatible. One complaint even claimed my owl boxes were creating an unsettling atmosphere at dusk. I wish I were joking. At first, I ignored her. Then I started saving everything: emails, letters, complaint notices, screenshots, and when the tone shifted from annoying to threatening, I installed cameras. Because Diane's real problem wasn't the vineyard itself, it was the western ridge block, the best view on my land, the block nearest Stone Ridge, the block she wanted transformed into a community scenic trail corridor. I laughed the first time she suggested it. She didn't. "We think the neighborhood would benefit from integrated open space," she told me after an HOA drainage meeting. "It's private vineyard land. It could be something more useful." That ended the conversation. A month later, the HOA tried to discuss acquisition opportunities. I said no. Then they came back indirectly through another board member. I said no again. The third time, Diane dropped the act. "You're creating avoidable friction," she told me in the clubhouse parking area. "No," I said. "I'm keeping my property." She looked at me for a long second and said, "You may find that difficult." That line stayed with me. Not because it scared me, because it sounded like a promise. The first false complaint came in March. A deputy stopped by asking whether I was hosting unlicensed commercial gatherings with alcohol sales. I was repairing deer fence at the time. I looked at him, then at the empty rows and said, "Do I look like I'm hosting a party?" He laughed, checked the property, and left. A week later came another report: illegal pesticide dumping, then illegal grading, then a claim that I was using HOA land for agricultural operations. That was when I called Elena Ruiz. Elena was a property attorney who specialized in land use disputes, access rights, and the kind of legal messes rich neighborhoods create when they start believing they own the horizon. She read Diane's letters once and said, "This woman thinks formatting is authority." She sent the HOA a formal response outlining my property rights, my county agricultural status, the exact jurisdiction lines, and a warning against future harassment. Things went quiet for about a month, and anyone who has dealt with people like Diane knows quiet doesn't mean peace. It means planning. That October morning, I was alone in the lower rows fixing a pressure issue when I heard the SUVs. When I saw the city police vehicles from Arroyo Creek, I knew right away something was wrong. City police had no business on that lane for a property dispute. County sheriff maybe, but not them. The lead SUV stopped near the pump shed. Diane stepped out first like she was conducting a raid. "That's him," she said. "He's occupying HOA property and threatening residents." I raised both hands slightly away from my sides and said, "Before this goes any further, you need to know your outside city jurisdiction." Diane laughed. "He's been lying about that for months." The senior officer looked at me. "Name? Caleb Mercer. This is county agricultural land. I've got parcel maps, surveys, and easement records on my phone right now." Diane stepped in immediately. "He tore out association markers. He's been moving boundaries and obstructing community access." Another lie. And not even a smart one. The officer asked if she had documentation. Diane handed him a laminated development map. Laminated. Not a legal survey. Not a county parcel record. Just an HOA map. I showed him the county GIS overlay and the recorded survey Elena had told me to keep on my phone at all times. He compared both and asked Diane, "Why doesn't your map show the county line?" For the first time that morning, her expression flickered. "That's the development map," she said. "Not a legal boundary map," he replied. "It's what the HOA uses." That sentence told him everything. The officers stepped aside for a quick conversation. When they came back, the senior officer's tone had changed. "Ma'am," he said to Diane, "this appears to be outside Arroyo Creek enforcement jurisdiction. We can't take action here without county verification." Diane stared at him like he had broken script. "That's ridiculous." "That's the law." She pointed at me. "He's dangerous. He's armed." I said, calm and clear, "I am not armed, and that is another false statement." The officer looked annoyed now. "Ma'am, step back. But Diane wasn't finished. She started piling accusation on accusation, threats, intimidation, stolen land, interference with community access. Too many claims, too emotional, too fast, and the more she talked, the less credible she became. Then Elena called. I answered on speaker. "Tell me you're recording," she said. "I am." "Good. Put the senior officer on." He listened to her for about 15 seconds, handed the phone back, and looked at Diane like a man realizing he'd been used. "Ma'am, we are not taking enforcement action here. This is a civil boundary matter outside city jurisdiction. Do not make further false claims to this department." She gave an ugly little laugh. "So that's it? You're just going to leave him on stolen association land?" He didn't even blink. "Ma'am, stop." She didn't. By the time the officers finally left, Diane's smile had changed. Gone was the smug confidence. What replaced it was colder, meaner, the look of someone who had just failed publicly and was already planning the next move. When she got back into her SUV, she leaned toward me and said, "This isn't over." I believed her. Elena arrived less than an hour later. She checked the lane markers, then frowned. "There should be a fresh county survey ribbon here." We found it cut and tossed into the brush. That same afternoon, my lower gate was chained shut from the outside. A section of bird netting had been slashed near Block 2, and someone zip-tied a fake notice to my crush pad gate reading, "Unauthorized agricultural use pending enforcement action." No county seal, no city seal, just HOA formatting. Elena stared at it and said, "Good. They're panicking." "How is that good?" "Because fake authority is evidence." She filed for emergency injunctive relief that same day. By evening, Stone Ridge's treasurer, Melissa Kane, secretly emailed Elena. Subject line? She lied again. Inside were board emails from Diane. One said, "Arroyo Creek will establish a usable enforcement presence if we frame the land as disputed common access property." Another said, "If official channels hesitate again, we'll create a safety basis they can't ignore." That line hit me hard, because now it wasn't just about land. It was about pressure, fear, the deliberate creation of a threat narrative around my property. That night, one of my West Side cameras caught a flashlight moving through the rows. County deputies checked the area and found boot prints near the pump box. The next morning, my spray rig had a slashed tire, and under my truck's windshield wiper was a folded note. "County won't save you forever." That was the moment the whole thing changed for me. I stopped seeing Diane as just another HOA tyrant. She had become something else, someone trying to make my property feel unsafe enough that I'd back down. Elena moved fast. She subpoenaed jurisdiction records, annexation maps, board emails, and internal HOA communication tied to safety and access. Melissa kept feeding us information. One internal memo, written by Diane, was titled "Lane Recovery Options." It included bullet points like nuisance reporting pressure law enforcement framing, resident fear consolidation civil possession angle. Elena smiled when she read it. "This woman is building our case for us." At the hearing, Stone Ridge's attorney tried to distance the HOA from Diane's actions, claimed misunderstanding, confusion, overenthusiasm. Then Elena played the body cam clip from the police visit, Diane falsely claiming I was armed, dangerous, and trespassing, all outside city jurisdiction. Then Elena introduced the internal emails, then the fake notice, then the threats, then the tampered markers. By the end of it, the judge granted the order. No HOA board member, contractor, or agent could enter, interfere with, or attempt to control any part of my vineyard, lane, equipment, markers, or operations. That should have ended it. But 2 nights later, my power was cut. Not naturally. The main disconnect panel had been forced open. While I was inside in darkness, I heard 3 hard metallic bangs on the crush pad tank near the barn. Then a man's voice from the rows. "You don't own this hill." I didn't go outside. I called the sheriff. Deputies found damage to the panel, tire tracks from a side-by-side vehicle, and fresh tool marks. The next morning, Melissa sent another email. Diane had maintenance checking lane access after dark. She said it was for documentation. That was enough. A maintenance contractor eventually broke and admitted Diane had directed after-dark lane checks, fake notice placement, and visibility pressure around the vineyard. She wanted a safety basis strong enough to force official action. That confession destroyed her. Stone Ridge's insurer got involved. 2 board members resigned. The city reviewed the false call-out. And suddenly the HOA that had spent months pressuring me wanted settlement. Fast. The final terms included a written retraction, damages for equipment and interference, full legal costs, stronger protective orders, and Diane's removal from HOA authority. Stone Ridge also had to issue a notice to residents confirming that my vineyard was private county agricultural land, outside HOA ownership, and outside Arroyo Creek City enforcement jurisdiction. Exactly what I'd been saying all along. In the end, Diane Holloway lost the presidency she thought made her powerful, she lost the board's protection, and she lost the one thing she relied on most, the illusion of authority. Now, sometimes I still walk that lane at sunrise. The vines are quiet. The fog sits low between the rows. The markers stand where they're supposed to. And every now and then I remember Diane stepping out of that police SUV, so certain she'd finally arranged my removal. She thought uniforms would do what lies couldn't. Instead, she handed my lawyer a perfect case. Because land doesn't care about confidence, boundaries don't care about status, and jurisdiction doesn't change just because an HOA president wants it to. Stone Ridge ended at the monument wall. My vineyard began where Diane's imagination stopped mattering. That was the truth the entire time. She just learned it too late. How did you like the story? Subscribe to my YouTube channel.